Britt and Brad, welcome to the Way of Champions. I'm super excited for our conversation today because I'm a fan of the work that you're doing and a lot of the incredible people that you've had the opportunity to talk to. So thanks for coming on.
Well, John, thanks for having us, and we're excited to be here. We've been doing this thing for about 3 years, but you are kind of the master, and we look at you and go, my goodness, you've been doing this since 2017, and so impressive to be putting out podcasts every week because we know how hard that is, and not just putting out podcasts, but putting out valuable content. So, congrats on all that you've done and the contribution you're making.
Well, thanks. And yet your background's so much nicer than mine. So
Nice for mine too. Hey, just for clarity, you don't we don't have to be champions to be on this podcast. Is that correct, John? Because I don't have any championships, to speak of. Maybe Britt does some pickleball
No.
championships, but I kind of it's kind of intimidating. The way of champions is kind of intimidating, but we'll do our best.
I always say, in the books that Jerry and I have written together, the champion teammate, being a champion it's a choice, right? It's a set of behaviors that I choose to encompass and be and reflect in the moment. And sometimes those season ends with a trophy or a medal, and sometimes they don't. But what was it, Bill Walsh? Champions act like champions before they become champions, and that's kind of been our thing. Is like you don't win something to become it. You just choose. I want to be this way, and
Mm,
then usually good things follow. I think you guys know that.
yep,
Yeah,
definitely
we
agree.
love that approach. I mean, you talk about the way of champions, you're really talking about, I mean, most people don't talk about, how I become a champion. It's really about how you do the journey. And our brand Pure Athlete is really about how do you do the journey and become the best version of yourself, on the field, but also off the field. And
Yeah.
so I think we're copacetic here, and and where we spend our time and the things that we talk about.
Well, how did you like, Britt? How did you get to founding Pure Athlete? What was your background? I think a lot of us are the same, right? We see it from maybe a coaching perspective. We see it from a parent's, especially I think when you look at it through the eyes of a parent, you're like, whoa, this is different.
Yeah, I think Brad can jump in here whenever he wants, but Brad and I were both, excuse me. Brad and I were just parents that I've got 4 kids. Brad's got 6 kids. Uh, all my kids are grown now, and Brad's still got a couple in the house, but we went through the sports journey, and I've got 2 girls, 2 boys, and my girls played rec sports and did musical theater and all that, but they were not consumed with sports. They just kind of did it for the fun of it. They're my oldest. Then I had twin boys, and they were consumed with sports. And so I coached my daughters a little bit, coached my sons in almost everything coming alongside. And they ended up, by the time they got to high school, they had dropped the multi-sport thing. They played it all the way up into high school. They wanted to play division. They wanted to play college tennis, and so they specialized in high school, and we went through that journey and all the ups and downs of that journey. And there were many were super challenging as a parent. And I'm sure we'll get into all that. And Brad and I were just friends and kind of going through this journey together. His sons were one of his sons who's really into baseball, a little bit younger than mine, but we would have lunches and commiserate and try to encourage each other and ask for advice. In the meantime, I was scouring the internet looking for answers on how do I manage this son who's super negative, in his outlook on everything, and how do I manage all these injuries? And my son's had chronic cramping issues in every sport, and so just all kinds of stuff. And wanting to ensure in the midst of all that that our relationships were better at the end than when we started, which is tricky, and all parents say that, but we all get caught up in the moment. And, that takes us in different directions,
Yeah.
sometimes unintended directions. And So anyway, that's kind of my background. Brad, you can
Brad, go
add to
ahead.
that.
Yeah, just what Britt said. We're two dads, yeah, kind of going through this journey together. My background was in sports marketing for 20 years, and then when I got out of sports marketing, I had the privilege of being a high school athletic director, and for about 8, 9 years, and both those journeys, my own personal journey with my kids, and then also seeing the journeys of all these kids and parents who'd come through high school, and realizing that this environment or this culture was dysfunctional.
Mhm.
And so, and then experiencing it as a dad and realizing I was creating some of that dysfunction, and Britt and I were just trying to find answers. How do you find information to help you as a parent to guide your kids where they can be the best version of themselves after this journey's over with? And then secondly, how do you, I was looking for role models for my sons, especially that, of athletes that, yeah, it's great to say, yeah, I want them to look up to Derek Jeter or Michael Jordan or whomever, but I wanted them to look up to athletes that were more than just that sport. It wasn't their identity. It was part of their identity, and they used that journey to be great dads, to be great leaders, to be great moms. And so we're looking for information for parents and inspiration for kids.
Yeah.
And really Britt wrote a book during the pandemic, and that kind of launched everything. And then uh just like you, we said, well, looks like a lot of people are doing podcasts. We'll try a hand at it, and we realized that we had a lot of wisdom from a lot of our mistakes, but then also we realized we needed someone who kind of was a brand ambassador, who kind of really represented what Pure Athlete's all about as really as a role model, and that was Jeff Francoeur, who was a longtime MLB player, lives in Atlanta, kind of legendary high school player in Atlanta, and is a national broadcaster for TBS. And so we brought Jeff in as a co-founder and a partner.
Yeah, and people like Jeff, I meet many of them who have their own kids and they say, wow, this isn't what it was like when I was growing up. The pressure to specialize, to commit early, certainly the costs, the travel, the ability to just play with your buddies, and so I meet so many people like him who just are using their platform to push back. Greg Olson comes to mind in football, but there's a lot of others, right? They speak openly about the importance of multi-sport. They speak openly the importance about being patient on the journey, and yet we're pushing back against a $40 billion industry and a lot of the business of sport, which isn't aligned with the needs of the children in sport, are they, Brad?
No, I mean it's I think a lot of the business is transactional, and I get that. I was in business for many years. Ultimately, you have to pay the bills, you have to pay salaries and things like that. But I think what you want from youth sports is transformational.
Hmm.
A lot of coaches. My dad was a coach, and that was always a goal is be a transformational coach. And so, as a parent, obviously, you should be thinking about transformation for your kid in this journey. I don't know how many companies that are in this space are really thinking about that. I think they're looking at the numbers, or looking at the demographics, and they look at it as an opportunity as a business opportunity, which I have no problem with, but it's just stated as that. And we wanted to be a positive disruptor in this space to help make it healthier.
Yeah, yeah. Britt, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, to underscore, I mean, what Brad's saying, we certainly, as I think about parents, most parents enter this journey with the best of intentions. They want to give opportunities to their kids, but then they jump on the train, which is moving very fast, and they're being told all this stuff from various organizations that they have to do. And oftentimes, Brad and I talk about this a lot. Oftentimes, the people that parents are turning to for advice are other parents that are in the same season that they're in, and frankly, they don't know any better
Hmm.
than somebody else. You probably get this too, but we get DMs from parents who say, you don't know what it's like in Southern California, and my 8-year-old, if he's not playing baseball 12 months a year, he's left behind. And that parent means well, and he wants his kid to have an opportunity. but they're just listening to the wrong voices and taking in a lot of bad information. And so yeah, it's a business. And I would say even the businesses that are out there, many of them have great intentions, but they too, like all of us who are in business, we want to move the ball forward,
Yeah.
pardon the pun, move the ball down the field from a business standpoint year after year after year, and that ends up putting pressure on parents to do more and more and more, younger and younger and younger.
Yeah, I know a South African sports scientist, and he gave this. He was talking about specialization, and he had a really good analogy. He said if we realize tomorrow that drinking coffee before 12 p.m. shortens your life by 10 years, nine coffee shops would probably say, you know what, we're going to open at 12, and a tenth would say there's a business opportunity, right?
Yeah.
And that's the issue, right? Is that I meet a lot of people who are running clubs who understand that what they're doing is not necessarily right for the kids, yet they're like, but if I don't do it, if I don't, have an all-star 8-year-old baseball team, if we don't play full ice hockey for our 9-year-olds, someone's going to come and take those people away and we'll lose them, and then my rink will close and my business will close. And I get that, and this is the great difficulty that I think so many parents face, those parents who message you from Southern California who say, I hear everything you're saying and I agree with it, and yet I can't do it because if my kid's out of the pipeline at 7, he's probably not getting back in. And they're not wrong. They're not wrong. So this is our challenge, isn't it?
I mean, I don't know when you say they're not wrong. I mean, we have a lot of kind of themes that we've been doing for the past 3.5 years, and I really believe that what happens before puberty is not nearly as important as people think it is.
Oh
I
yeah, for
think
sure.
I think and I also think how your DNA is, how God created you, has so much to do with this. I don't know if a parent can make a child into a great athlete. I think a parent can screw up a child from becoming a great athlete.
Hmm.
And I just think what we're trying to show, and through our knowledge, our wisdom from all the mistakes we made, through our athletes, through our guests, our experts, is that there may be a contrarian way to do this, and that don't listen to whatever else is saying that your kid has to do this and has to do this. They won't get left behind. If they're a great athlete like a Jeff Francoeur, Jeff could have chosen 10 different ways to get to where he ended up getting to, and that he would all ended up probably being an MLB baseball player. He probably could have been an NFL football player. His parents chose a certain way. Yeah, most of us are not Jeff Francoeur. It's where you're kind of on that edge, where your kid is on that edge to where they are close to possibly getting us. It's a little bit tricky in making that decision. I do think in terms of specialization, I do think there's a realistic approach you have to take at a certain point to realize I can't step on the field or the court in every season to be the best player and make that team. I may have to specialize. We just think that probably the best time to do that is after puberty,
Yeah.
right before, at high school, possibly, and even then, if you know pretty well, if there's an awareness that your kid's not gonna play in college, doesn't have a desire to play in college, then I'd even say at that point, if you can, play as many sports as you can in high school, unless it keeps you from making a team.
Yeah.
If you feel like you have to make a team, you have to specialize, and that's okay too.
Yeah, and I hear you. And Britt, before you jump in here, I'll qualify my remark with I agree with you completely. Where I say, what the struggle for parents is this. Number one, the only choices out there a lot are the travel baseball team and the travel basketball team and the travel soccer team, right? Because my kid is a pretty good athlete and he or she is competitive, and if we don't play there, it's boring, right? And now because that's the only choice, and they're like, "Hey, it's 11 months of baseball, it's 11 months of soccer." That's what I mean by they're not wrong that if we don't choose year-round soccer, there's not a necessarily an alternative. And this is where parents are, I think, say, you know, I get it. Um, And it's just hard, right? Right, Britt? Like it's just really hard as a parent. I have two kids who are in college and I've watched them and also as a parent I had to say no, like you're gonna have to make a choice here. And I think when it comes to early specialization, what I tell people now is if you can't find a path for multi-sport, you have to find a path for multi-movement. You have to become an athlete.
Mm.
You have to do parkour, yoga, strength and conditioning. Those all count, right? You don't have to be a multi-travel team athlete, but you have to learn to move in different planes and not just swing a baseball bat or you're toast.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think, at the end of the day, parents have to make decisions and based on their values, based on having the right information and the right perspectives. And what we're trying to do at Pure Athlete is give, a full comprehensive perspective because we think the perspective that's out there has been too one-dimensional.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, I was looking back through some of your podcasts. You had Dr. Nero Janthi
Hmm.
on your show. We've had him on our show. He was my son's doctor for like 4
Oh
years.
yeah, he's a tennis guy. That's right.
Yeah, he's awesome. Took us through, unfortunately, like four major injuries,
Mm.
but helped shepherd us through that. And he's one of the leading researchers on early age specialization. And Dr. J will say, the research shows if you specialize early, you're going to get skilled quicker than some of the other kids. So parents all kind of know that. That's a bit intuitive, but what they don't necessarily recognize is the odds of burnout and the odds of injury. And this is research. This isn't just somebody saying it.
Hmm.
The research shows that those odds go up dramatically
Yeah.
later in life. My son, a lot of his injuries were overuse injuries, and
Hmm.
he didn't even specialize till high school.
Hmm.
Uh, but you know, parents get all that information and they make their choices with their kids or for their kids, depending on what age it is. And we just think they need to understand the whole picture.
Yeah, I think that's so critical is it's just the big picture. You have to be, I always say to parents, like you have to be the general contractor, right? You have to know everything that's happening because as the soccer coach or the baseball coach, I might see them 3 times a week. I don't know what else they're doing. And the thing that always scares me is the kid who goes to swimming in the morning, then goes to school, then goes to soccer, then goes to baseball. And I was talking to a friend the other day who lives in California was talking about their kid who had a travel basketball game in the morning, his first baseball practice in the afternoon, and then a school basketball game in the evening. And this was a typical Sunday or Saturday, right? And it's like and I just know your kid's probably going to get hurt, and they're more likely to get hurt and burn out and drop out than they are to quote make it to the next level.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we talk a lot about the concept, and we didn't coin this phrase, but free play. And it's
Hmm.
one thing for your kid to be playing all day at a park with his or her friends, and there's then they can just play. Uh, that's not going to burn them out. That's probably even healthier for them as well because they're going to play a lot of different things. It's when adults get involved and try to structure it and put trophies involved. I mean, the kids are going to want to win. They're going to compete to try to keep score and win, but it's when adults get involved at the early ages that it kind of becomes less fun. It becomes more structured, and that kid who had those three different travel, games, uh, would probably still love to do that much activity, but maybe not as where it's just so structured, and that's where burnout comes, I think.
Well, yeah, you just like there's nothing worse than seeing a 12-year-old with no joy on their face or excitement to be there. And yes, these are their friends, and yes, they love insert sport. It's just you can only do that for so long. So to going back to what you said in the beginning, Brad, like it's like early childhood performance is a very poor indicator of what's going to happen later.
Mhm.
Um, and the only way to keep getting better is to keep playing. No one makes it who quits. And so how do you look at that? I think of something too, Britt, like your boys who played tennis. Tennis is a sport you can play till you're 80, right? And yet we look at sport as this like little tiny sliver of a journey of, oh my God, if you don't do this by the time you're 16, you're toast. And so we freak out about a bad month or a 2 month injury or something. But if we said, you're going to play tennis for 70 years,
Yeah.
then what happens in the next 6 months really isn't a big deal, is it?
Right. Right. But when you're 16 and you're trying to get recruited soon, and I mean, you think every month matters so much. I've told this story many times, and so I'll keep it short. But my boys, were pretty good. They're pretty good athletes, and they were good basketball players. But today they're 23, by the way, and one of them is 5'8" and one of them is 5'9".
Hmm.
So we knew they weren't going to be basketball players long term, but they loved basketball. And in middle school, and Brad was the AD at the middle school they were at initially. Um, as sixth graders, they played up and did well, and so on and so forth. As seventh graders, as the, wise, all-knowing dad, told them that they probably couldn't play basketball that season because it was going to take 3 months out of their tennis. And this was a critical time for their tennis
Hmm.
in my mind.
Hmm.
And so we took that season off of basketball, and that's playing with their school buddies, doing something that, builds their confidence, that they feel good about, and it's different than what they do the other 9 months of the year. And looking back on that now, I mean, how stupid was I mean, the 3 months that we would have taken off of tennis tournaments, and that doesn't mean we wouldn't have picked up a racket, but the 3 months we would have taken off of tennis tournaments didn't make a hill of beans difference in
Hmm.
their long-term trajectory. And they missed all that fun. Now in eighth grade, they went back and they played basketball again and they had a blast.
Hmm.
And uh,
Did
and,
you
and
get
then they
called into the
specialized
AD's
later.
office for that
I
decision?
didn't, because Brad didn't know any better than me at that point.
I mean, yeah, it hurt the team. That's for sure. It was a very selfish move, if you ask me. But no.
Well, but Brad, as an AD, you dealt with these type of decisions all the time. Kids choosing not to play with their buddies because their club sport said that's not real, that doesn't count. You need to play here, right?
I mean, I think that yes and no. I think the club coaches have gotten smarter. Um, the kid knows that club is more serious. The opportunity to play with your friends. I'm talking high school.
Hmm.
The opportunity to play with your friends. If you're a high level soccer player, a high level athlete, you know that high school is really not as important as your club or travel team in terms of getting recruited. But you want to play on that team so bad because you want to play for in front of your friends and with your friends.
Hmm.
The pressure comes in a little bit from other high school coaches at your school, not intentionally, because at the school I was AD at, the coaches were great friends and worked well together, but they're kind of myopic. I mean, they're in their world and they may say, hey, I know you've got other sports to play, but hey, we've got open gym this month, or we've got workouts this month. And they don't say it directly like, hey, you need to be out there, but the kids kind of feel that internal pressure they should be there. And so
Yeah.
and the parents feel that pressure that their kid may be left behind and things like that. So, I mean, it's one of those things like I think again, you have to have an awareness as a parent to give that guidance to your child as they're making these decisions. And hopefully what we are providing to the Britt Lees of the world is when his parent kids are in seventh grade, he can look for resources and say, hey, not just in the tennis world, even like, hey, can they still keep playing other sports and still progress as tennis players? Or and so it worked out great for Britt's boys, but it's hard. It's hard as a parent to try to make those decisions.
Yeah. And it's hard as a coach, right? To find
Mm,
that balance because I want my basketball team to do well. I want my soccer
sure.
team to do well. And it's hard as a club coach to know that, hey, this kid is probably not going to get better as a soccer player in 3 months of high school soccer as they would be with me, but where else might they grow? right? Maybe they're the 12th best kid on their high level soccer team, but they're the best kid or second best kid at their high school. Well, now they're a captain. Now they're taking free kicks. Now they're have all sorts of responsibility and eyes on them. There's growth happening that might not come from the level of competition, but it's all input into this end product of an athlete.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, John, if I could pile onto that, in addition to all those things that you get out of playing a high school sport for your school, it's also just fun. And the club and travel and all that at times, especially as they get older as teenagers and they want to play next level, the pressure gets more and more. Uh, in the world of tennis, playing high school tennis doesn't do anything for you
Mhm.
in terms of getting recruited. And in fact, most coaches will tell you it's going to hurt you because you're not going to play good competition. But my boys played high school tennis, and we made that decision. And um, and they were fortunate enough to be on a team that won 4 state championships.
Yeah.
And well, no, I'm sorry, they won three. They had a COVID year, so it got
Mhm.
wiped out. And they will tell you today, and one of them played Division I college, and the other burned out after his senior year. They will tell you now that their high school tennis was the most fun tennis experience they had.
Yeah.
And because there was no pressure, they were with their buddies, they had success. And so, just, Brad, having been a high school AD, we always want to put a plug in. And most of the athletes we have on will
Yep.
say, yeah, I'm playing for my high school. I mean, Greg Maddux said, winning a state championship in my high school is the best moment in my sports
Mhm.
career.
Mhm.
And we could duplicate that with lots of other
Yeah, me
athletes who
too.
say the same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Well, there's also the another benefit is, I'm impressed by the great athletes who play multiple sports because they're going to excel obviously in every sport. But we had on Kirk Cousins at a live event who was, he wasn't a high level football recruit. I think he may have been a 3-star, but he was on that, kind of on the border of getting recruited by D1, and he wanted to play high school basketball his senior year. And he was like the 12th man on his high school basketball team. And the coach was honest with him and told him, hey, you're probably not getting to play much. His dad even said it's probably best for you to focus on football. This is after the season, so you can work on getting recruited. And he said, no, I want to play with my friends. And I just, and he said, yeah, and I didn't get to play much, but I had an amazing experience. Just the character and humility that showed of a guy who was the best football player at his school to not be the best in basketball, but still want to play. And I think as a parent, that would just make me so proud of that child that they wanted to be a teammate first in that situation and not a star. And that shows so much about his character.
Because that's the life skill, right? You're
Yep.
going to be a part of
Yes.
teams the rest of your life. And I mean, Kirk Cousins had a pretty horrible injury. I'm thinking of the right guy, right? Yeah, yeah. And quarterback. And I mean, what if that happened when he was 18 and couldn't play in the NFL?
Mhm.
Being a great teammate was an important life skill. And I know a lot of college football coaches look at like, I want to go see you be the 10th man on the basketball team. How do you act? How do you treat people? How do you support your teammates when you're not the star? Because that's going to tell me about your character. Because you know what? If you come to Ohio State, you might be the fourth string defensive end and you're not getting in. So how are
Yep.
you going to practice, get better, be in the weight room? Being the 12th man on the basketball team is a pretty good indicator of that.
Yeah, my dad was a college football coach for 9 years, and when he would recruit a kid, he cared less about what the coach would say and what his teammates would say. He would go find like the manager, and he'd find the cafeteria lady and ask him, what kind of kid is this? How's
Yeah.
this kid when the lights are off? What's this kid like when nobody's watching? They're going to tell you the truth. They're going to tell you
Yeah.
because they have nothing to gain by
Yeah.
pumping up that kid. But yeah, those coaches will find that out. They'll find out the character of the kid.
I had a kid that I coached in soccer for 5 years who was just a first round Major League Baseball draft pick. And I would go to his high school games. He eventually at, 15 stopped soccer and just focused on baseball. And obviously it was the right decision for him. And there'd be 8, 10 scouts at his high school baseball games. And they all wanted to talk to me, coach in a different sport. they were all ecstatic that he had played basketball and soccer up through middle school because he wasn't a finished product. And those sports gave him something that just playing baseball wouldn't do. But again, they weren't looking at what do you think about his, how he drives the ball or his speed between the bases. Like they can see and measure all that. They want to know what's this human being like? How does he treat his teammates on in other sports? How does he drive his team and lead his team? That's what they're searching for. The stuff that they can't see in front of them. I think these are the type of messages that you guys are doing a great job of getting out, and we're trying to get out is like no coach is going, you know what a player, but he's also a terrific human being. We don't want him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and John, as you know, I mean, sports ends for everybody at some point.
Yeah.
And for 99 point something percent of those kids, it ends before they ever earn a nickel on it. So you have to say, what is the benefit? What's the return on the investment? Well, it's the life lessons.
Hmm.
And so, another big message to parents is, leverage sports, to be intentional about grabbing hold of these life lesson opportunities because they're everywhere in sports. And those are the things that your son or your daughter are going to take to the business world, or are going to take to being their parents themselves, to being all facets of life.
Yeah. It's a long way from having this conversation like the three of us are having right now and saying, I'm going to make a business out of this. I need to give this more of a platform. So, what was the eventual impetus behind Pure Athlete? And hey, let's formalize these great conversations that we're having over a cup of coffee or over a beer, and you provide this good information to other people.
Well, we spent a long time talking about it,
Yeah.
in incubating the idea, if you will. But I think we just felt like, I mean, some of those stories I've told you from when my kids were little, I mean, you may have in your circles, but I had not heard the word specialization
Hmm.
when my kids were younger. There was just even the information that's out there today on social media is so much greater than it was 5 years ago.
Mm.
And so hopefully parents are learning, but we just looked at this thing and said, there are so many challenges and opportunities in sports, and it is such a beautiful piece of our culture that seems to be traveling in a bad direction.
Hmm.
And 60 million kids are playing today, that the more we talked about all of that, we felt like, there's a societal cultural issue in a big area of our culture. There's a big market of people participating in that. And we want to be part of helping provide a solution, or provide solutions, or lead a conversation, and knowing that there's other people out there, doing the same thing. But that's what ultimately led us to. I have a background in corporate conferences and producing corporate conferences and producing lots of video, messaging and storytelling and so on and so forth. And uh, Brad and I's initial idea was we wanted to do a big conference, and we wanted to bring parents and kids together. And as Brad touched on earlier, to inform and inspire them, bring in some athletes, bring in some experts, and do something that was, immersive, and people would walk away like, wow, I learned some new stuff, and my kids are inspired, and we did this together. Well, we quickly, determined that was a pretty big lift, financially and otherwise. And, podcasting was starting to grow. And so we said, why don't we start here and build this platform, and kind of see where that leads us on other platforms.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I hear that. It'd be everyone's like, "Oh, you should just put on a conference." I'm like, "Oh yeah, sure. You should just get a PhD. Good luck."
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Brad, anything to add to that? I mean, I'm looking at Britt, right? And you've got your values of character and belief and skill on signs on the wall behind you. Like this idea of pure athlete, what does that mean to you?
I think, well, first, before I answer that question, I'll just want to add a little bit. So it's a great question. I don't think we've ever been asked, like, why did you think of this as a business? This is only my second startup, so I'm not an expert by any stretch, but I've done a lot of research and before I do it, and you look at the market, before you do something. And Britt just talked about this market. You look if there is there a problem out there, and Britt talked about that. The second thing is you look at your organization, and I'm just very blessed to have two partners, and Britt and Jeff, who are super, super smart, super talented, but also just aligned in our faith, aligned in kind of the mission here. Um, Lastly, what you talk about is the product and what would the product be, and really we didn't spend too much time other than we started with a podcast. We wanted this to be multi-layered, multi-platform, but we think we have a really good product, and we wanted to get it out there. What we didn't expect, in a great way, we were surprised just how passionate the customers are.
Hmm.
I saw that as an AD, but I never expected just the response we were going to get from our audience. And you've seen that, I'm sure, just how personal this is. It's these people's
Hmm.
kids. It's their most prized possession. And doesn't matter how successful they are in life. Um, if their kid's hurting, they're involved, and they want their kid to be successful. They may be misguided. They may have some, ulterior motives. They may be living vicariously. Whatever the reason is, they're passionate about their kids' journeys, and hopefully, so that they can use that again to become the best version of themselves. But it's a passion play. It's something you get excited about waking up every morning, and so that's really, I think, why it took us a while, but kind of checking the boxes and all those things. And then the last one was a surprise, is why we launched it. Um, I mean, Britt came up with the name Pure Athlete. I don't want to take his credit away, but I look at a pure athlete is the ultimate role model. As someone that you want your kids, or if you're an athlete, who would you look up to that really checks the boxes in a lot of areas? How do they walk the walk? How do they live their life? What's their character like? Yes, it's impressive if they're talented and they can be the best in their sport, but everybody's been blessed with different gifts and different talent levels, and that walk on who scratched and scratched and scratched and clawed to make that team, even if they never saw any minutes. You watch the tournament right now, March Madness, and you see those walk-ons that are on the bench. I mean, that's a victory. Those are great pure athletes, right? If they've done it the right way. And so, or the person that just the kid that barely made their high school team. They're pure athletes if they handle it the right way, and their stories are just resonate just as much as having on these superstar athletes that we have on. uh and so that's really, to me, and Britt can speak for himself, but that's kind of, I look at a pure athlete as just the ultimate role model and doing it for the right reasons.
Britt.
Yeah, I mean, we love the word pure. When you put the word pure in front of anything as
Hmm.
an adjective, it typically means the best version of whatever it is that it's an adjective of. And so it would be easy. You have a microphone. We now have a microphone. It's easy to bash everything and to point out all the negatives. We love sports, and we think sports has great value in our culture, great value for our kids and our families. But as athletes come along and are becoming some kind of athlete, we just felt like, how can we help parents shepherd their kids in a way that their kids become a pure athlete, the best version. When you look at me versus Jeff Rancour, we could do all the same things, and me becoming a pure athlete would not compare to Jeff Rancour's level of being a pure athlete,
Hmm.
because again, God's touched his head and said, "You're gifted
Hmm.
in this area." But I can become a great teammate. I can become a leader. I can become, the best version of myself and make my high school team and have a great experience
Yeah.
just as much as he can. So that's kind of the genesis of all that for us.
And these things, I don't like the word soft skills, but these character traits that we are emphasizing are so critical. I mean, talk about a Georgia guy. We just had Champ Bailey on the podcast, right? And he talked about this. And one of the questions I asked Champ, which I asked most every athlete, is how many players did you grow up with maybe more ability than you that didn't make it? And they all could rattle off a bunch of them, right? So it's not just ability. They're like, oh man, I had this guy on my basketball team. I had this guy on my baseball team, my football team. They're way better than me. But they didn't have the discipline. They didn't have the work ethic. They weren't teachable. They showed up sometimes and not the others. So all these things around integrity and discipline and grit that they're not just things we're throwing out there to make the kids who don't play a lot feel better. Like these are the things that are actually the determinants, as genetically gifted as a Jeff Francoeur might have been, there's a lot of genetically gifted people out there who didn't play 12 years in Major League Baseball either,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So we don't want to take credit away from there's something
No, no.
beyond that then gets you there. That might be your genetics are kind of your ceiling, right? You can't practice your way to 7 feet tall, but maximizing what they give you is everything you guys are talking about.
Yep.
Well, and that's where we came up with these five pillars because, skill is one of those pillars and talent plays into skill, but really you don't find any people, or you find very few people at the top level of their sport who haven't demonstrated grit and work ethic like crazy to get there. But when you put all those things, belief is one of our pillars, and that's that whole idea of, when you get on the biggest stage, you have the confidence to perform.
Mhm.
And that's, that has to be developed for many, many people,
Yeah,
for most people. And so, yes, I think that's true. There are those who've been touched genetically, but I don't mean at all to infer that they don't have to work hard. They're just going to get there. They
right.
work hard too.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I'm jealous of the incredible guests that you've had. I look at your list and I'm like, oh man, I would kill for Nick Saban or Dabo Swinney or some of these guys. And I want to just ask about, maybe one or two lessons or people that have really stuck out for each of you. But I want to start with a Dabo Swinney just because I've admired his work, his coaching, his focus on culture, his focus on developing human beings. And, obviously had a stretch where he's winning national championships and now a stretch where people are calling for his head because he's not winning enough games. And it just makes me sad when we look at just did you win versus like what did you do for those people on your team to instill, and Dabo was a guy who resisted the transfer portal and maybe he's a few years late to that because you can't also stare reality in the face and ignore it. But I also get the fact of like, hey, I want people who are going to be here 5 years. I want to watch them develop. I want them to come in and work for a spot and work hard. So, just any thoughts on that type of coach who's still trying to stick to these really core values, and we've had great coaches, right, who are just like, I'm not putting up with this system anymore, and they've walked away. So, I mean, Brad, maybe start your thoughts on that first.
Well, yeah, I mean, Dabo, I think we got Dabo because of the relationship he had with Jeff. I think he knew about Jeff coming out of high school. And so Jeff's got some friends at Clemson. But oh man, unfortunately he's a contrarian. He believes in the important things first. He believes in his faith. He believes in developing these guys, transforming, having them part of their family, their culture, their community. Good news, bad news for him is that he won two national championships and expectations changed. It's sad that he's looked upon as past his prime, or he's looked upon as not getting with the system, but I think he's who I'd want my kid to play for.
Yeah.
And I think that I don't know. College football especially is at the height of its popularity, but are we missing out on some amazing coaches like in college football and basketball that have kind of said, you know what, this is not really the Jay Wrights of the world and the Tony Bennett's of the world and the Dabo Sweeney's he's hanging in there, but um, he, like I said, he's who I would want my kid to play for because I think I really think he's competitive as all get out. He wants to win, but I don't think it's the most important thing to him. I really believe that. And
The
just like,
purpose is something greater.
yeah.
Did
And
we win on Saturday?
exactly. I think if he'd won 10 games every year and been who he was, he probably would never have a problem. But he won 2 national championships, and I think even his own fan base got spoiled. And so, but man, what so fortunate to have him on there, and he did not disappoint, Britt, did he?
Hmm.
No, no, he's amazing. And, I think one of we just, Brad just said it and you nodded to it. We'd love to have our kids play for him, but we've had a number of guests on our show who are top level people who say, I would have my kids play for Dabo, and people like Kurt Herbstreit have had their kids play for Dabo. And, so yeah, he's a real deal. That I mean, speaking with him, and of course, again, he's a big Braves fan, and Jeff and him have a great relationship. So it was fun also, but but that was definitely one of our favorites episodes. There are we had David Cutcliffe, who's retired now, but he works with the SEC, and David, and he's the real deal, and he cares about character development and cares about investing in kids, and of course he comes from an era where you could do more of that, but he's super concerned,
Yeah.
And in his role with the SEC, he's speaking, and he's working with the NCAA and speaking in coaches' ears quite a bit. There are a lot of guys out there that want to do it right, but we got a system that it's just hard on them.
Yeah, I mean, the ones
Uh,
who retired are able to sort of speak
yeah,
about what would fix it, right? Certainly, you've had Nick Saban on, and he
yeah,
uses his platform every time on
yeah,
College Game Day to share why this isn't working, right? Like, just as soon as it gets difficult and you can jump in the transfer portal, or you can jump in the transfer portal to see if someone will pay you a little bit more money and whatever, it's like there no hunger in paradise anymore. And I think it's fair for athletes to make money when schools are making a lot of them hand over fist, and meanwhile an athlete gets suspended because someone gives them $20 for an autograph so they could buy dinner. That was crazy. But if it swung so far in the other direction that I can play at 5 schools over 4 years just chasing after money and whatever, I don't think that's good for anybody.
And I
I'd be
still think
worried.
sorry to interrupt you, John. I still think you're talking about the top 5% though, and it's the other 95% that I think NIL is fine. I think true NIL is fine. A kid should be able to make money off their name, image, and likeness. It's not that anymore. It's obviously the collectives and it's a pay for play and it's a true meritocracy.
Mhm.
I see our kids, it's so much harder to get into D1 now because of the transfer portal and because of the NIL budgets. The product in some ways may be better because the kids are older on the court
Mhm.
and on the field. And I do think it's a true meritocracy for those kids that are under recruited. The
Yeah.
problem is it's not really the college experience anymore.
Yeah.
I've got friends, kids who are gonna probably end up making it to Division 1, but they had to go the hard way. In some ways, is great, but they're going to be at 3 or 4 different schools, and that's not about money. That's about just opportunities and being able to move up. And so, are they the same kid who stayed at the same school for 5 years, created great, meaningful relationships? We're part of that university's community that could help them professionally long term. Even the kids that aren't chasing the dollar, the way this system is set up now, they're going to have to just keep moving from place to place.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's really good for the kid long term. If you're making millions, maybe that's okay. But most of those kids really still aren't making millions. It's just
No.
you about the ones
And
that
and
the one
and we
percent.
have, right? I mean, I was reading an article yesterday. We're recording this during the NCAA basketball tournament, and where have all the upsets gone? Where have all the mid majors gone? Well, they're gone because your best player is
Yep.
gone the next year,
Yep.
right? And
Yeah.
so
John,
it's a
Yeah.
platform for that under recruited kid, which is great. But when, you're never going to have the Butlers
yep.
anymore, the Davidsons making a run because the kid who's the senior on that team would have been long gone 2 years ago, you know?
Or he plays 2 years for you at Butler or 2 years for you at Davidson, and then he goes to the Kentucky the next year.
Yeah.
And again, hey, more power to him. He gets paid or he gets recruited to where he probably should have been. But man, if you're a fan of Butler or a fan of Davidson, I mean that's a tough pill to swallow. Or that coach who developed that kid, who was the first coach to see something in that kid to offer them and develop him for 2 years, then it's great for the kid, I guess. In most ways, it's really tough on the fan base, tough on the coach and the school.
And the
Well,
school. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I was just going to say it kind of goes back. You said a minute ago, John, the pendulum has swung from way out here to way to the other side, and we kind of started off this conversation. I think Brad talked about transactional versus transformational, and that's what we sacrifice. I mean, college sports now is purely becoming transactional for kids, in jumping one place to the other, and the benefit of leveraging athletics for most kids who aren't going to make money long term. For most kids, the benefit of leveraging your athletic prowess to go to a school and get an education and build a network that is going to serve you, socially, professionally, in every walk of life for the rest of your life, is just being sacrificed on the altar of, this and that.
Yeah.
It's a shame.
Yeah. Let's talk about some good stuff to finish. Like, what of all these guests that you've had, athlete, coaches, Britt, starting with you, like what's a favorite story that you've heard over the years in your podcast, or a moment that you'd love to retell because it just stops you in the tracks? And I'm asking this because people ask me this all the time, and I know it's not the easiest question, but I think, we all have favorites of like, oh man, that was a great point, or that was a cool episode.
Yeah, yeah. Let me think about that for a second. Brad, do you have one that comes to mind quick, and I'll
Yeah,
follow
I
if
mean,
not.
we've had some. I mean, some of my favorites. Sean McVay was amazing. Kerry Walsh Jennings, because of humility. Sean McVay was just so engaging and so humble. But my favorite, I say favorite, the one that hit me the hardest was David Pollock. My son was a junior at the time. My younger son was a junior going through his baseball journey, and David said, it made quote was, "It's your kid's journey. If it's not your kid's journey, if it's your journey too, then it's not going to end well." And it hit me like just it struck me right in the heart, and I really kind of had an epiphany as I was listening to him. Like, you know what, he's exactly right. I need to step back from this journey, let him own it, and it really created a healthier space for my son and me, and he actually thrived, because I was just being a dad as opposed to trying to be his coach or trying to be his mentor and help him along this journey. But he has to own it. I can't own it for him, and that really just, as far as guests, it really meant the most to me. That really struck a chord in my heart. It was when we interviewed with David
I,
Pollock.
I love that, and it's the best advice. I think some of the best advice I got along or around. If you're using the word we struck out 10 batters today. It's a
Yeah.
problem, right? We did not strike out 10 batters today. Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Britt.
I'll jump in here. Two things come to mind. One of them is kind of parallel with David's story, is Kurt Herbstreit, and we had Kurt on, and we talked for an hour and 15 minutes, and he would have kept going. Sean McVay was the same way. Sean McVay was literally, because he has a 1-year-old, he's literally asking us parenting questions and taking notes, which is so on brand
Hmm.
for him. But Kirk talked about coaching his sons in baseball at, like, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old, and and he completely lost it on the field one day to a point of stepping back from it and saying, "What am I doing? What is going on?" And he pulled himself out of coaching his kids from then on. And it's the same idea of it's not, this is their journey. And the other thing David said and all that is, why do I care so much? And
Mm,
that just was like a just hit me right in the heart as parents. Why do we care so much if our kid at 8 years old, gets two hits versus strikes out a couple of times? It matters so much and too much sometimes to parents, the performance aspect. The last story I would bring up is Jay Billis, and we had Jay on, and Jay talked about his high school basketball team out in California and how good it was. Uh, but I think, and Brad, you can correct me if I'm wrong here because we had Jay early on, but I think Jay was the only one off his high school team that played next level, and of
mhm,
course, Duke and yada yada
mhm,
yada. And he had a high school basketball coach that was miserable,
mhm,
and he made the experience absolutely miserable for all the kids on that team.
mhm.
And Jay's message to coaches was like, come on, guys, 90 something percent of the kids you're going to coach, this is going to be the last time they ever play organized sports in high school, is going to be in high school, and you're going to make it an absolutely miserable experience for them. What are we doing?
Yeah.
And I just thought that was a really, really poignant message.
I love it. Thank you for sharing all those, both of you. And because I think these are all the messages that we keep getting out there to people. Because, like you said, you're talking about the passion of your fan base, right? And we share these stories. We share them from people whose names we recognize because that maybe makes us click on and go, well, I'll listen to that podcast because that's a famous person. But it's the same story that someone who, the parent down the street could probably tell. And
Yep.
I love the emails that say, you saved my relationship with my son, right?
Yeah.
You saved my marriage because I was going crazy over sports or
Yeah.
whatever. And rarely, you know, is it, oh yeah, and by the way, now they're a household name. But every once in a while, I'll get one that says, I read your book 12 years ago. My son's the best defenseman in the NHL or something. And it's like, and like you kept me on the straight and narrow. And that's the best stuff. Like that's why
Oh my
we show
gosh.
up every week here and do this stuff. And
Yep.
thank you to the McVays and the Kirk Herbstreets and the David Pollocks and the people who are willing to share their story because it's impactful that maybe finally a parent goes, whew, or a coach goes, yeah, maybe I'm not doing this right. Yeah. Yeah. How can people connect with Pure Athlete?
Well, we our podcast is the Pure Athlete podcast. It's on, anywhere there's podcast. Pureathlete.com. We have a new platform that we just launched called it's Pure Athlete Baseball, where we really take a deep dive into the journey of baseball from getting started to early development, travel ball, high school, college, and recruiting. And currently we have about 17 major league players. That this is a master class in youth baseball. We have about 17 major league players, most of which are either Hall of Famers or they're going to be Hall of Famers. People like Bobby Witt Jr. To Chipper Jones to John Smoltz, and you name it. um, Doing micro lessons, video micro lessons on all aspects of baseball and the journey. We also got college coaches and we've got experts on things like arm care and mental performance and anything and everything having to do with that baseball journey. So that's also found at pureathlete.com as well. We're all on social media on all the normal channels. And so that's kind of how you find us.
Awesome. Well, listen, guys, it was a great conversation today. The hour flew by. I certainly appreciate the work you're doing and bringing great voices, and we need as many voices as possible to, I think, shift the paradigm a little bit. And so, thanks for all you're doing to help our kids. Really appreciate it. And thanks for being on the Way of Champions.
Well, thanks
John,
for
thanks for having us.
yeah, thanks for all you do. You're the OG of this thing. So thanks for kind of setting blazing the trail for us. We appreciate all you do. And thanks for having us.
Well, my kids are going to laugh because they call me the OG as well. So there
Same
you
Brad's
here.
kids are going to laugh that he said that.
go. Thank you, guys. Thank you all for listening. Thanks to Britt Lee and Brad Williams from Pure Athlete, pureathlete.com. Great conversation, and I highly recommend checking out their podcast. We just talked about some of the names that they've had on, from Sean McVay to Nick Saban to Dabo Sweeney to Kerry Walsh Jennings, Chipper Jones. The list goes on and on. Mallory Swanson, so many others. So across a variety of sports, a variety of coaches, athletes, and everything. Just sharing this message of let sports belong to our kids. Don't steal their childhood from them. Coach transformationally, not transactionally, and so much more. And I like Brad's point as well, right? We probably can't make a great athlete, but we can certainly screw one up. So yeah, check them out and everything. Thank you to our sponsors, Sprocket Sports, Zone 14 Coaching. Thank you to our podcast champions, and thank you to all of you for listening. Your influence is never neutral. Go out there, change the world, make a difference. See you again next week, everyone.